can hear it. That clock is ticking away, and it says it's after 11 o'clock, so you know what that means. It means it's time for your favorite show and mine, the Countdown to Armageddon, and I'm your host, Publius, bringing you the latest and greatest and sometimes the worst things out there, and hopefully maybe just a little bit of understanding along with all the rest. And today, Publius wants to talk to you about employment. More importantly, about the claims that we keep hearing coming out of Washington. Now, earlier in this administration, we were hearing how Joe Biden was taking credit and talking about how he had brought more people that the federal government had provided, his administration had provided more jobs and generated more jobs than any other president in history for a single month. Now we hear, with the jobs report having tanked, he's blaming this on Trump and COVID and everything else. Now, it's interesting because I want to point something out to you. Unless the federal government grows, it doesn't provide a single job. So where do the jobs come from? Well, the majority of the jobs during the Great Month came because of all the red states that, against Biden's decrees and against the warnings from the CDC, cut back on the restrictions that were put in place from COVID. Now, with businesses being allowed to open, people had jobs again. It's a great system, right? An employer goes out and he hires people and they go back to work. This is what should happen. Now remember, not every state has opened everything up yet. But then we have the last jobs report that came out, and it was abysmal. Why was it abysmal? Well, because all these states that are open are finding that the people make more money on unemployment right now. Remember, part of the COVID bill was a boost to unemployment pay, an additional like $300 either a week or bi-weekly or monthly. But either way, it comes down to where unemployment makes more than going to work. This has always been one of the problems that Republicans supposedly complain about: welfare. You cannot pay somebody so much money that it's better to go on welfare than it is to get a job. At least an entry-level job or a low-paying job. So what's going to happen? Well, people went out, saw the jobs were paying X amount of money. They worked it out, figured out, hey, I make more on unemployment. I'll just stay unemployed. And boom, the job report came in and it tanked. And Biden is coming out now and saying, but it's not my fault. It's not us. It's COVID. It's Trump. It's every excuse under the world other than how we're dealing with things are not working. Now, meanwhile, you have people that are actually involved in business, like the Better Business Bureau, the Chambers of Commerce, Republican governors, and so on, that are saying, no, we got to stop these increased benefits. That's only rewarding people for not working. We need to get them out there working. And so, some of these governors are cutting back on the unemployment benefits, at least getting rid of the federal kicker, so that people would be motivated to get a job. Now, keep in mind, as I stated earlier, the only way the federal government, the only way Biden actually provides a job is if the federal government increases hiring. But Biden in no way gets a person to be hired by a private company. He doesn't have that power. Now, what he can do is make it harder for that company to hire people. One of the first rules you got to keep in mind is government never gives, but it easily takes away. When the government is looking at helping the economy, remember, most of what they do slows the economy down. The best thing they could do is stay out of it, but that's against their belief structure. especially the belief structure of the Democrats and the modern day progressives. They are of the belief the government should run everything anyway. That's a communist viewpoint, I know it. And some of them say, well, not everything, just some things. And that's a socialist belief. But regardless of how much government involvement you believe in, when government writes regulations, they hurt businesses. Some businesses. Now, it's interesting to see the companies that support a lot of these regulations and other things are the big super mega corporations that everybody sits back and goes, ooh, they're evil. We need to stop their influence. Well, part of their influence is to get some of these regulations written. Why? Because that hurts their competition. That hurts mom and pop. That's why Walmart does so well, because they can afford dozens and dozens and dozens of lawyers and accountants and people to do their paperwork in a way that a small business can't. So as regulations are put in place, the one it really hurts are the small business, and they go out of business. Now, COVID was a disaster. The way it was handled was even worse. The way Biden is thinking about doing things, there's just no explanation for this. You claim you're out to help people deal with COVID, but yet the majority of your bill is pandering to your own party's particular belief structure. It has nothing to do with COVID. Now Biden is out there talking about his great American jobs plan, his infrastructure bill, which he has said all the experts agree, but yet no expert can be found that supports what he says. Kind of interesting. We're going to have Biden, a man who can't keep facts straight, go out and push this bill through on an infrastructure bill that has the majority of it not dealing with infrastructure. Kind of makes you wonder, who is Biden really working for? Now, I saw an article recently from the Babylon Bee, and later on this week I'm going to be doing a special on the Bee, just so that, and bringing this out because, frankly, the Bee all too often, they're right. But in this latest, one of the articles of Babylon Bee is Biden came out and admitted his first 100 days as a failure because America still exists. The joke here is obviously that Biden is out to destroy America. And maybe he is. The sad part is his policies will help destroy America. They're not going to bring goodwill. They're not going to bring utopia, and they're not going to usher in the golden era. What they're going to do is make things harder and put more and more people unemployed and dependent upon the government, which I honestly think is their plan. If enough people, if the majority of the country is dependent on the government, then the government is assured of their votes by just increasing how much they give them. And that seems to be the way we're heading. We have, well, let's face it, already half this country, half the people in the United States receive some form of welfare, some form of government assistance. As the number increases and the amount that these people receive increases, eventually we're going to have a problem because you got to pay for it. Now, Biden says the way to pay for this is raise taxes on corporations. No, don't you realize that just raises costs? Corporations don't really pay taxes. Their customers do. How is that, you ask? Well, if I'm selling you pencils, let's say, and they raise my tax rate, that just means I'm going to raise the cost of my pencils, because I'm not going to reach in my own pocket to pay the taxes. The taxes are going to come out of my profits. Well, I'm not about to work for free, so that means I raise prices. So when you tax corporations In reality, you're just taxing the people more. This is why Publius has tried many times to get it across to us and across to you that the amount of taxes that we each individually pay is higher than we realize. We see that in the price of the items we purchase. Everything we purchase has taxes in it. Think about that. Everything you buy, there's already taxes involved. If that item costs $2, a certain percentage of that is actually used to pay the taxes of the people, the companies that brought that product to where you bought it. That includes the person who made it, the person who shipped it, the warehouse that distributes it, till finally, the store that puts it on the shelves. Every one of these people has a certain amount of taxes, which means every one of these pieces and people have increased the price of that object to cover part of their taxes. Now, not just their taxes they increase the prices for. They, of course, want profit. They want to be able to make a living. But part of what you're paying is you're paying the taxes. How much that is, I don't know. That would be mind-boggling to sit down and start figuring it out. But what you can do is you can figure that for every you want to know what the taxes are, how much taxes you're paying? Figure out how much taxes every company in the country pays. Add them together and divide it by all the products they've sold. And that's going to give you the average amount of X that is made up of taxes. Now, certain things are taxed even higher. They get a sin tax. This is as it's called. And this, of course, would include items like tobacco products and alcohol. They have a higher tax percentage. So as each of these people along the line has to pay a higher tax, that tax is put into the price. So as you're sitting there watching Joe Biden go out and tell everybody how the American Jobs Plan is going to employ 16.9 million people over the next X number of years, and that all the experts agree, keep in mind, no experts agreed to that. Number one. Number two, the closest study said that there's going to generate that many jobs. That many jobs are going to happen in the time frame regardless of the plan. That the plan will indeed increase the number of jobs. That's just one survey. That's one expert's opinion. How many other opinions are out there? See, that's the problem with politicians, is they get to pick and choose and spin, and nobody ever calls them on their lies. Joe Biden claimed he created more jobs than any other president. He didn't create nothing. What happened is people finally got to go back to work. And he can't even take the credit for that because most of that was due to Republican governors. So, employment is not really bettered by the government. It's actually made worse. When the government gets involved, it makes it harder. When the government increases unemployment pay, it's harder for companies to hire people because they would have to pay more than the extra that the government is supposedly handing out. Now, historically, there's a very famous quote, and who originally said it? Sometimes people say this person said it, that person said it, but the quote, I believe, comes from John Adams, which says that democracies fail when the people realize they can vote themselves a pay raise out of the public largesse. I'm going to put it in English, and I know part of that has already been changed. A democracy fails when the population realizes they can get themselves paid out of taxes. All they got to do is vote for it. That's when democracies start going under. And when you have a country where the majority of the people in this country don't pay into federal taxes at all, and where the majority of your taxes are on the very top percentages, then it looks to me like some people figured out how to vote a pay raise. And I'm tired of hearing it that the rich need to pay their fair share. What is the definition of fair? Fair is usually defined as they need to pay more than me. One of the things that people like to compare is a billionaire who makes X amount of money off of his investments. It's not a salary, it's capital gains. And capital gains are taxed at a different rate. So, Warren Buffett, who everybody likes to bring up, how he makes so much more than his secretary, but yet pays such a lower percentage than she does. Well, you're comparing two different things, apples and oranges. Warren Buffett, who draws no salary, makes millions of dollars on his capital gains, and he's taxed at a lower rate than his employee who does get a salary, and it's a good salary, and she pays a higher percentage. Now, if Warren Buffett had a paycheck and he actually received a salary, he would be taxed at a higher rate than his secretary. So again, when you're looking at apples and oranges, it's not exactly fair. But remember, most people's ideas of fair is whatever screws other people but doesn't screw me. Translation, utopia. There's no such thing as a fair tax. Now, any calls for a fair taxation system tends to be shot down. Progressives don't like it because, well, that means that person who only makes $50,000 is going to pay the same amount as somebody who makes $200,000. No, it means they're going to pay the same rate. And the idea that somebody who makes less should pay a lower rate, why? Do they not get the same benefits as the person above? In reality, they have access to benefits that the millionaire doesn't get. If you're sitting back and you're a millionaire, or you're making, say $500,000 a year, you don't get certain benefits. You're not going to get food stamps. You're not going to get any government supplements to your income. You're not going to get any of these things that the person down there that's making $50,000 does get. Now, if you did a flat tax, each person pays the same percentage. That's not fair because, the rich person, he can afford it more. Why would he be able to afford it more? Because he has more extra? Or because you just don't like the idea he makes more than you? See, that's what's behind most progressive tax systems, is the idea to punish somebody who makes more. Which is also the only way the Democrats, the progressives, the socialists, and the communists have ever figured out how to make everybody equal. They do this by bringing everybody down to the lowest common denominator. Alright, I know that's quite a few little things all mashed up together, but the bottom line is, the federal government doesn't make jobs. All it does is stop jobs. The federal government doesn't help companies. All it does is hurt companies. When they say they're helping companies, they're actually hurting the company's competitions. They don't make income. They take income. Government is a parasite. For it to be anything else, it means it's taken over part of an industry, or an industry itself. Ever wonder why the trains don't work so great? Because the government took it over. Why is the U.S. Postal Service always screwed over? Because the government runs it. Notice you can compare the U.S. Postal Service with UPS, FedEx, and the others, and it's amazing how those companies show great profits, but the Postal Service is always in the red. Now, I know some of you are going to say, well, they have to fund X amount of their retirement, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I know. But that ain't enough. What's the problem is you have a government-ran corporation. And it doesn't need to make a profit to stay in business, because it can always get bailed out by taxes. So, that's enough for today. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. I'll be back later this week with more. Keep yourself with the notification button, because you never know when they're going to come. And this has been Publius on your countdown to Armageddon. So please hit that like button, hit that share button. Don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to support us, the least you can do is subscribe. If you're a progressive, subscribe, because otherwise you're going to hurt my feelings. If you're a conservative, subscribe, because this way you're paying for what you're getting. And that's the truth, because you're paying nothing. Subscribe and you get what you pay for. Now, if you would like to support this channel directly, you can do so by looking in the description of this episode. You'll see a number of ways that you may donate to this channel, or you can donate through this platform. Take a look at the top of the page. They'll say, somewhere in there they'll say donate, and that'll help you figure out how to get to it. If you have problems, in the description is a listing of my email address. You can email me and tell me whatever you want, including telling me how much you think my show sucks. Hey, I don't care. Send me the emails. I'd love to hear from you. I may even respond. You never know. Either way, this has been Countdown to Armageddon. Hope you had a great day.